Welcome to a very special episode of Healing Wisdom. I'm your host, Pandora Peoples, and we are celebrating the Provincetown Film Festival happening now through June 15th. We're speaking with filmmakers from 5 films. This is the short version of our interviews. The longer versions will be on Healing Wisdom podcast, and you can find that wherever you get your podcasts. It is by a miracle of divine providence that we are able to be here today because my MacBook Pro died. Thank you, John, Chris, and Raven for helping make this possible today. First off, we speak with Kahane Corn Cooperman and Innbo Shim with their film Creede USA.
Creede USA is about this little town, Creede, Colorado. It's very isolated and remote. It's about a 5-hour drive from Denver. It's at 9,000 feet elevation. You kind of have to, you're not going to pass it on the way to anywhere else. You need to want to go there. And in this case, we wanted to. My first few trips there after reading an article just about the theater were by myself. And I think that really helped because I kind of got out of my own comfort zone and my own bubble where I live and wanted to see how a theater company could exist in this little teeny place for almost 60 years and explore what the impact of that is. I had no idea how that would play out or who I would meet. I met people who shared very different points of view than me, and I hadn't had that experience because I have been living in a bubble. And so I was apprehensive, but I found as soon as I started talking to people, all the politics of it all recedes really quickly to the background. And what was foregrounded was sort of who they are as people, who I was as a person. I was sharing myself as they were sharing themselves. And they were just as guarded as I was, some of them, and some were open and not. But it was all about connecting on a human level. And I thought when I saw that town and I saw how people were interacting there that, they don't really have the, I guess, luxury, if that's what you want to call it, of a bubble. And I didn't know how we were going to show this engagement that they're forced to have, but I knew it was worth trying and exploring. So Innbo came on board and we started filming and casting who might our characters be? Who do we want to follow? And that's how it started. That's how we started exploring it.
I think for me, I don't think I've ever been to a town as small and as remote as Creede, Colorado, where I actually got to know people. I think it's so interesting because my family immigrated to the United States in the 70s, but we went to New York City, this, big metropolis. And, in a way, what I learned is that there's like different protections that a big city gives you that is completely different from the protections that a small community can give you. Like in New York, when I arrived, it was, I guess the beginning of the melting pot era, but at the same time, there's also a lot of hostility that can confront you there because people can anonymize you. They kind of think of you as a group of people and associate you with that group of people and make judgments, either positive or negative. But in Creede, you're one person in a town of, that ranges from 280 to 400 people, depending on whether the theater's in season. Like everyone pretty much knows you as a person and they can't just kind of create this abstract idea of you. So I think in that way, like that human to human connection that you really experience on a day-to-day level, I think politics can recede because everyone is humanized to a certain degree. And I think that's what I really learned from making this film.
Even though there are full-time theater staff that live there year-round and are fully a part of the community to manage the summer repertory, right? It expands and all these different kinds of people come in. But it's been going on summer after summer since 1966. And just, if nothing else, the mere exposure to seeing people who are different than you from different backgrounds of people of color, people on the LGBT spectrum, I think has had an impact on this town, whether they wanted it or not. I mean, their idea to bring in a theater company was purely economic. And I think that it definitely helped. It was a bizarre idea, but it worked. And, but what they didn't anticipate was that with the theater comes theater people. And so to see sort of tradition and change living up against progressive ideas, arts, for this many years, summer in and summer out, I think has had this effect on this town. But that being said, it's not a utopia, and it hasn't been spared the divisions that our whole country is experiencing. And so in that sense, it's like this fascinating microcosm of our country and of the polarization going on, but also provides a model of the necessity of engagement to survive. And I feel like the access that we were given, halfway or so through our filming to the Board of Ed issues, where all of these character subjects that you get to know come together in this modest room and are having these discussions of national resonance, but they're face to face and they're trying to figure it out. Like, they get all my respect for doing that. And to see how they do it and how they navigate it is I think really important for people to see right now.
That was Kahane Corn Cooperman, director of Creede USA, and producer Innbo Shim. It's playing tonight at 8:30 and also Friday, June 13th at Water's Edge Cinema. Tickets are available at provincetownfilm.org. We spoke with filmmaker Kim A. Snyder about her documentary on book banning. The Librarians screens today at the Art House at 4 o'clock and at Water's Edge Cinema on Friday at 10:30 a.m.
Well, the first thing that caught my ear was the word list. That there was this thing called the Krauss list from the state senator in Texas, and that he was calling on schools to review their shelves for 850 books. And it became colloquially known as the Krauss list. I immediately thought of the MacArthur list. It's an era I did not thankfully live through, but, my mom did. And we all kind of historically know about that time. So that went through my head of like, oh my goodness, is this another time where we're headed toward a form of McCarthyism and severe censorship and blacklisting and all those things that came along with it? But it had a new flavor, which was it was coming out of our pandemic. And I thought that was really interesting. It actually made me want to research like what things historically have followed on the heels of plagues, and the weakness in society and how people seize politically on those vulnerabilities in society. And so, yes, the whole politicization of COVID and the masking and the birth of Moms for Liberty, which we kind of now know was, as one of our librarians said, it was a rage looking for a target, a free floating rage to kind of seize on. And we also know that politically there was a real concerted effort to reach suburban moms in certain swing states. So that happened around the politicization of COVID and this whole birth of, quote, parental rights, which is, the vernacular of that and the semantics are something that I think all of us have, whether it be pro-choice and, pro-life, these kind of words that have been commandeered by the conservative right are kind of like, we own patriotism, we own, and I think about that a lot. And I thought about that then. I think about it more 3.5 years later, obviously, in the moment we're living in. But it's kind of like the parental rights assumes that there is a set of parents who deserve to have choices and jurisdiction over their children. And then the other side is kind of, okay, what about the other people? How about everybody else, like the majorities parental rights to have you not dictate what my kids can read. So it flipped, as it's pointed out in the film, from the masking, the politicization of the masking, to the book ban thing. That was something that didn't get in the film, was the fact that around that time of the Krauss list, simultaneously there was a governor's race in Virginia over Glenn Youngkin, and he won over a book. It was Toni Morrison's Beloved. The ads were that. It was. And I think what happened was people looked and said, well, that worked. And that, between the Krauss list and that started getting traction as an issue that would stick. It's like throwing stuff at a wall. What's going to stick? That was like, that works. And then that really caught on. And that was all going through my head about what was the larger thing. And we started in Texas, but then we made those connections early on as filmmakers. And then it was sort of like, okay, we have to expand the story beyond Texas to a national scope. Well, my producing partner who's walking out, Janique, and I, have been on this journey with these librarians who've become, real comrades, in not only making the film, but now in working really closely with us on the impact that we think the impact campaign of this film is a movement. And, for me, the whole trajectory, it starts with our anonymous librarian who says we never were on the forefront. We're not meant to be seen. And she says, but now, I think we're the vanguard. It's our story. We have to tell it. And, cause it happened to them. I think of them as the canaries in the coal mine, because 3.5 years later, it's so fitting and poignant to me that, and I chose to end, not a spoiler, but in this way of saying, we don't know what's going to happen next. Like, we're living on a cliff right now. A lot of us, we don't know what's going to happen next in this country. But they're saying, but we know that our story's still being written, but now it's everyone's. And I think that's the thing. It just reminds me of so many large problems. If you think about, I do think about this as a cancer in a way, a germ, whether it be the telltale signs of fascism, totalitarianism, that is a playbook in so many historic references you can make, from the Cultural Revolution in China to the Khmer Rouge to Nazi Germany, Stalin, Russia. Any of those references, this is right out of the fascist playbook to go after the books and the libraries and the librarians and the elite and the teachers. So they were always on the front lines, those folks, to these things. And I feel like somehow in my lifetime, I think about coming of age more in the time of AIDS. And it wasn't until it affected certain people, it was a gay man's problem in San Francisco or New York, right? Until it started to hit, you knew somebody, or suddenly it was hemophiliacs and babies through breast milk, and the disease spread beyond, like, I don't have to deal with it because I don't know those people. And now I feel, in a way, these librarians, which for a lot of people it's a shock that they have been singled out and attacked, like the Salem witch hunt, suddenly it's like a lot of it has come to our doorsteps. So as a documentarian, I'm feeling censorship in a way I didn't 3 years ago. And I feel like there's that for a lot of people. And how is it going to affect our larger media? So it's way beyond school libraries, books. I mean, this is a large and concerning thing.
Healing Wisdom spoke with Elliott Kennerson. He and Angel Morris co-directed Lovebird. It plays at Water's Edge Friday at 4 o'clock and Sunday June 15th at 3:30 at Water's Edge Cinema. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much, Elliott, for being here with us. So your film follows a breakthrough discovery of homosexuality in seagulls that took place in 1972. So can you tell us what brought you to telling the story of lesbian seagulls in the first place?
Well, I thought that everybody knew about the lesbian seagulls, but as I've discovered making this film and telling people about it, like, no, they never knew about that. And Angel, my co-director, is the one who kind of brought it to my attention again, came to me one day. We worked together in a small production company here in San Diego, came to me and said, do you know about the lesbian seagulls? And I was like, of course I know about the lesbian seagulls. Everybody does, right? No, it turns out they don't. So they were doing research for another project, really, and came across it. And the driver of it was there was a grant for this type of film, and we decided to go for it and flesh it out. So that's where it came from. But the lesbian seagull thing, it sort of comes up every once in a while. In the 70s, it was a big deal when it was discovered to many people. And then it comes up kind of as a joke. It's come up as a joke a couple of times in the last couple decades since this discovery. And so we, as sort of nature and science filmmakers, thought it was a great opportunity to flesh it out. We wanted to talk about the science and where did the discovery come from and what did it mean when the discovery was made. I think it is really a feminist story. What we encountered was a story about a couple, and between them, they held one job. And that job was to be a university professor. And, as we know historically, the woman in the pair, frankly, did a lot of the work and didn't get as much of the credit. So, we were once we sort of learned that that's how it worked in that time, and we ran into several couples that had a similar story in doing research with people who were working at universities at the time. We, in our hearts, really, George is going to smirk to hear me say this if he listens, but we really wanted to give the film to Molly because we felt that it was really a record of what a woman had achieved in a world that wasn't set up for her success. So that is definitely part of it. And then to answer your question about at the time, we live in California and I grew up, I was a child in the period when all of this happened. And we've seen California grow up and George and Molly have as well since they lived there. And really the Channel Islands are an incredible place and sort of a last speck of kind of raw California. So that's what we got to see when we went out there. The island where the discovery was made is not accessible to people. It is shut off from people. And that was actually a recent development when we started filming. So we were disappointed to not be able to go onto the actual island. But we did go to Anacapa Island, which is, one of the larger of the Channel Islands, and is also, all of the islands remain like a big rookery for seagulls. Basically, all of the seagulls in California spend some time in the Channel Islands, mating and surviving for a while. So yeah, it was a really beautiful glimpse into raw California. And, we thought of the island kind of in our imaginations as this secret, we used to refer to it as Paradise Island, like the island from Wonder Woman, where the secret of femininity and sexuality is hidden in the magical island. That's kind of the image we held in our brains, as we were making the film, and we wanted to give it that kind of reverence and magic, as we made the film. I think that the big discovery, the pleasant surprise, biggest pleasant surprise that we encountered was when Molly told us that her son from her second marriage, who was born a son, is a transitioned queer person now. And that, as a filmmaker, that was kind of when I was oh, we got a story. That's because, and when we showed the first time we showed the film at a premiere, we met up with some trans friends of Angel's who were in the audience. And the moment when spoiler alert, the moment when we show the child, Molly's child, as an adult transitioned person, they gasped. They were oh, it's about something. It applies now. And this experience that Molly went through of going from a super traditional background where she had a very traditional marriage in a very traditional time period adds up to this and the life that she lives today and the life that her born son lives today. It means something. And I think they felt a part of it when they saw that too. And I was super gratified when they gasped.
We spoke with filmmaker Allison Argo about her latest film, Forever Home.
I was at a screening of my last independent film, and it was down in North Carolina. And after the film, a young couple came up to me, and they were so excited about pigs. They wanted to know all about pigs. And I asked them a little bit about themselves, and they shared that they have a sanctuary for farm animals rescued from the farming industry. And he is an architect, the husband in the couple, and they design these extraordinary buildings for these animals that are custom designed for that particular species. So it's not a one size fits all. Don't just throw, animals in a barn. Think about who they are and what their needs are, and then design a home around that specifically. And I just thought that was so intriguing and a wonderful, wonderful idea for a story, for a film. So I went and visited, and I thought this is my next film. And then I had to, being an independent filmmaker, then I had to scramble around and try to scrape together funds. But that came slowly. So it's been 6 years.
It's so beautiful how they have this very symbiotic relationship with nature, and they're very unself-consciously empathetic.
Oh, that's so beautifully put. That's absolutely. They are at one with the beings that they rescue and with the world around them. So it's true. It's not just about animals. It's about our environment and living graciously on this earth and living compassionately, I guess. And they do it so beautifully.
It's really interesting because I don't think I've seen a lot of documentaries on animals, but I've never seen one where I felt like the people who are being stewards of the animals really don't see any kind of separation between like the consciousness of these animals and humankind, because they themselves are so natural.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with you that, animals are every bit as intelligent or talented as we are. They just have a different kind of intelligence, and from species to species, it's different. And if you really approach them in that way, there isn't a separation. It's just knowing that we come from a little bit different culture, but we all have, heart and blood racing through our veins, and we all feel pain, and we all experience happiness and joy. And it makes the world a lot friendlier place to live in when you come to that realization. I think a lot of people get there with their dogs and their cats, but then they don't sometimes connect the dots with an elephant or a gorilla or a duck or a goat.
Allison Argo has won 6 Emmys and 4 Genesis Awards for her documentary work on animals. Her breakout film was The Urban Gorilla from National Geographic. You may know her for Keepers of the Wild, The Last Frog, The Secret Life of Cats, The Urban Elephant, Chimpanzees, An Unnatural History, Parrot Confidential, or The Last Pig. And lastly, this morning, we're speaking with director Paulo Marinou-Blanco about his film Dreaming of Lions.
So your film tracks 2 depressed people meeting under strange circumstances and finding unexpected intimacy. And before Dreaming of Lions, a few years ago, you made Empty Hands, which is a short about the same mortician who consults his dead clients for advice. But
That's right.
That story takes place later in his life. So how did you first find this character, Amadou?
Well, in a way, they both came to me more or less at the same time. But then with the short, with Empty Hands, I decided to just take one of them, one of the 2 co-protagonists of the feature Dreaming of Lions, and do a kind of little laboratory test of certain narrative techniques, filming techniques, and also to explore the character a bit. And how he came up to me, well, I actually have insomnia. So, it's completely autobiographical in that sense. And I guess in a way, it was an inroad. Let me backtrack. If you spend enough time without sleeping, the entire world goes very, very crazy very quickly. And I decided to have Amadeo have this kind of limbo-like state as an inroad for him to question what makes life worth living for him. So what actually brings him joy, what doesn't, and is life to be lived at any cost, or is it legitimate that we demand certain conditions of it, whatever they may be? So his might be completely absurd to us, but I think he still has the right to demand them. Sometimes what people tell me is that, the film stays with them and they think about it for a few days after, which is also a great compliment, So I'll take it. I think for me, it was a matter of, despite the fact that I was, and did a tragic comedy about something as serious as, terminal illness and wanting to end your life prematurely on your own terms, euthanasia. I felt that you also have to show that you really respect these issues, because these issues represent a lot of pain for a lot of people. So you can't just have the comedy. I wanted to approach it through comedy, and I'm glad you found the film entertaining, because that is, it's a serious subject matter, and it hurts. It's yeah.
Oh, well, I think that definitely came across. And I tend to like dark comedies and just be like, oh, that's life.
Sorry.
But I really think that that's at the highest level of like our wisdom and understanding that we can hope to attain in this life is the contradictions and the simultaneous joy and pain, the whole spectrum that
I agree.
Experience either simultaneously or within a close amount of time. But to make peace with the pain, and to find humor in the intensity, and a level of surrender, and kind of, get a bird's eye view of our own life, while still being embodied and inhabiting it. But it's interesting, because that's the conflict of the character, is that if it weren't for her incredible physical pain, she would feel very differently about life. But
of course, she's a force of nature. I mean, she loves life. Yeah. She doesn't want to end it. Yes. She just feels forced to, precisely because she loves life so much and has so much dignity. She doesn't want to wither away. She wants to end it while, as she says, while she's still herself. Yeah.
We've been speaking with Paulo Marinou-Blanco about his film Dreaming of Lions, happening at the Provincetown Film Festival, Friday, June 13th at 9 p.m. There are still tickets left. Available at the provincetownfilm.org website.